minutes to let people come in. Um, and then I would say that we would ask Chuck to kind of give us an update on reunion thoughts. And then we'll turn to the program, which is Adria and Sandy. Adria's going to go first. And then afterwards, we can stay on and have a chat as long as people want to, So once we start the actual program, I'll ask everybody to mute because it's hard for people to, talk while other things are going on. I think everybody's pretty familiar with the Zoom, but you can have one or two views. You can have a gallery view, which is what I have on, which you can see about 25 people at a time. Or you can have a speaker view, which will pop up the person speaking. So why don't we turn it over to Chuck, who's been so gracious all these years to take on the burden of and the hassle of planning and collecting the money and the reunions. So again, we want to thank Chuck. And Chuck, why don't you tell us what your current thoughts are? And I know you posted on Facebook today. And if people want to give some feedback, that's great. So the mic to Adria and the screen share, and we'll ask everybody to mute. And at various times, Adria may pop up and ask a question or whatever. We'll have time for some comments and questions and general discussion. And obviously, anyone who has to jump off the call will jump off. I'll just note that we're going to do this the second Sunday. Mike Menard is on the line, and he's going to tell us about his music and all. We had that wonderful video of When I'm 64. I have to confess, once in a while, Michael, I play it just to, even though we're 68, but it's an enjoyable thing. And then we're looking for a couple other people talked about doing something March, the second Sunday. And now that we're pushed off to September, so we can do this once a month with somebody as long as somebody has something to say or present or whatever. I know I talked to Chuck before about talking about some of his volunteer work with Rotary and building a library in Africa and things. So as people have some ideas or things they think of interest, let me know. And we have plenty of time to do this, and it's great. So good to see you all. So I'm going to turn it over to Adria for the next step. Okay. So I'll ask everyone to mute so that there's not background noise. Okay.
Hi, everybody. Yikes. This is really amazing. Thank you so much, you guys, for showing up. And I'm sure Sandy does too. We're both really honored and very humbled by your interest. So that's pretty awesome. Yeah, so I've been doing a lot of Zooming because I teach art to adults. So this is fairly familiar to me. But I'm really excited to show you. 50 years is a lot of time to cover, so you're going to get a little quickie view. But let me start with where you probably remember me last, back at Peabody, which is, whoops, right here. This is the last thing. So remember that I was the art editor of the high school yearbook. Oh yes, so that was my great design. You saw on the cover and all my stuff inside. And yes, I have wanted to be an artist all my life. Yeah, that is true. And really, it's been a wonderful journey from that time. And I just want to say too that while I was in high school, I was trying to think back about, you always think about your influences. Does anybody remember the Margot Lovelace puppet showcase or whatever it was called? Does anybody remember that in East Liberty, Shadyside area? Well, anyway, Margot Lovelace let me be a little volunteer intern when I was, I guess, a junior and senior. And it really, was very, a very big thing for me. It really got me off on this track. She gave me a lot of confidence about doing this, and I saw this world that could be possible. So anyway, we think about our influences. Okay, so why is this? Oh yeah, so yeah. What was your influence as an early child? The cartoons we all watched, right? It was really something I think about. I didn't realize it, but it's in there. All the different things that make you who you are. Dr. Seuss, and the 60s. all that, feeds into, how you develop as a person, and certainly as an artist. What do you look at? What's in the air? I went to Carnegie Mellon, and Sandy was there too. So there's Sandy, and here I am, but you would never know it because, of course, I'm wearing a mask. Yeah. Anyway, so after CMU, I moved to Tucson, Arizona, which was wonderful, and it was such a breath of fresh air to get away from Pittsburgh and to be in some place that was beautiful all year round, although incredibly hot in the summertime. Yes, it's true about all that, but it was great. I went to grad school there for the first time. I got my degree in art education there. And then moved to Boston. So I've kind of crossed the country a little bit. And here I am now in Boston for the last almost 40 years. So I've really been here longer than I ever lived in Pittsburgh. And some of my early work, I think this was bought by Greg Corsini's sister for him. And I don't know if that's really true, but I think so. So it should be out there somewhere in the world. And this is one of my pieces that was inspired by Tucson. So this is really early work. And I'm just going to kind of show you sort of my evolution as an artist here. So when I moved back to Boston, I went back to graduate school for the second time to go to Mass College of Art for a degree in a master's in painting, and really, hone my painting. And yeah, here's me with a toothbrush. So there's always sort of a sense of humor in my work. I think you'll sort of see that throughout everything. My work was very figurative at that point. Lost in the Desert. This piece is oil. It's about, I don't know, 4 feet by 5 feet wide. And The Flying Dream, just before I had kids. So I'm taking a leap of faith. But that's kind of what I was doing at that point at Mass College of Art. And skip a bunch of years, skip, 18 years or 15 years while my kids were growing up. I have 2 kids, boy and a girl, Josh and Eva. An unlikely source of inspiration showed up to me. It was my son's high school notebook doodles. So I picked this series of work because I figured that, this is something that we all can relate to if you've had kids, or even if you ever were a high school student, you know about doodling. So I actually was peeking through his notebooks, hoping to find something that he had written about himself that would help me understand him. It was a kind of a difficult relationship. This sort of had a lot of issues, shall we say, but he's fine now. But anyway, I could not find any writing that he made about, why he, anything about his inner being, but I found notebooks full of these doodles. They were just crammed full of these doodles, and they were all very similar. They were all just kind of geometric shapes. And I started thinking that maybe there was a language here, that maybe he, it could be a dialogue with him, but not a dialogue in English, but a different kind of dialogue. So I thought that this was going to be pretty interesting. And so I took these doodles, photocopied them onto transparent plastic, and I used an overhead projector to make them larger. And so for about 5 years, this was my topic of investigation, exploration, this kind of conversation with my son. And so this painting is on paper. It's about, I don't know, 30 inches wide by about 20 inches high. And of course, the doodles were tiny. They're only 1/4 of an eighth of an inch. So, but this gave me a chance to play with these doodles as shapes and kind of see what happens when you paint them. And the overhead projector enabled me to paint them exactly as they were, blown up. So that was very important, that they weren't just sort of like his work, but really where his hand was in there. Kind of like when you copy someone's handwriting, you feel some kind of a closeness with them, I think. So I played with Josh's doodles, and I did many, many paintings using them, overlapping them, painting them in different shapes and different designs, but always the same, kind of imagery, same idea behind all of these things. So this is just, kind of over a bunch of years. This is a very big piece. This is about 96 inches wide by probably 6 feet tall on paper. And also this too, this is another one about 5 feet by 8 feet wide. But again, these are all his doodle shapes, just all blown up, all different colors, just that's where. And then really began to speak to me. I began to see different things in them and just kind of just enjoyed this. This is called Constellation. And I really felt like this was like the starry night because some of his shapes were like stars. But and if you have kids, what an intense relationship that was, and that is, and so it was it was pretty rich source of inspiration for me. And then toward the end of this whole series, I blew them really big. These are 4x4 each panels on canvas. Again, using his doodles. This one's branched off a little bit. I was looking for other kinds of things that I could enlarge like this. These are QR codes blown up really, really large and painted in the same way that Josh's doodles were. So yeah, and this is another this is 8 feet by 8 feet in total. And then skip a bunch of years and I'm bringing you closer to my recent work. And don't let me forget that I have a video I'm going to kind of finish up with here, which explains a little bit more about my working process. But I kind of was moving away from the doodles. I really had it enough. I was really moving on. And so I started working. This is all acrylic paint. And by the way, one of the jobs that I have, I teach art to adults, and I also work for a company called Golden Paints, which makes really fine acrylic paints and also oils. And so I teach people how to use their products all over the place. So it's one of the things that I do to pay the bills. But this one is called Next Nest. And this one is 6 feet by 5. It's called Plunk. And so I wonder if you can see, any of the early influences of the cartoons and the 60s in there. I mean, I wonder, if you can see that. It's more or less there, but hidden. This one is Night Boardwalk, same size, big size of 6 by 5 again. And this one is called Spin Cycle. So I like to play with lots of different textures in my work. If you were to see this larger, you'd see that it's all kind of little kind of cracks. And this one is like a thicker sort of pouring of gold paint. So I really enjoy pattern. I really like to have the work talk about energy and life and movement. So it's always been in my work, that feeling. This is a self-portrait. This is just a self-portrait. What can I say? This is now we're coming into my most recent work, which is really only about a year and a half, 2 years old. So this is a whole series that I've been doing that's sculptural. Excuse me. And I really kind of made this leap to sculpture about 3 years ago, and I never thought I would do that. But this work is made out of something called Sintra. It is a quarter-inch polyvinyl PVC foam plastic that you could actually cut with a jigsaw. But I actually do have other people cut it out for me, laser cutter and other things like that. But I've strung them together, and they're meant to hang from the ceiling and give you a feeling of like having to kind of walk through this installation of these crazy shapes that are pretty light. They, if you walk into them or around them, you can, really, you don't have to worry about too much danger. but my intention is that you do feel like you're in a space, kind of surrounded by these sort of friendly, humorous shapes moving around. This is a scene from my studio wall. I'm also making things that hang on the walls that relate to the other pieces that I'm doing. This one preceded the one earlier work that I just showed you. This is made out of a lightweight plastic, also PVC, but I can cut it out of scissors and a mat knife. And again, it's meant to be seen at eye level so that, you can bend down, you can look through the holes, that you can really feel like you are part of the piece moving around in it. This is one that was just hung at the Cahoon Museum of American Art on the Cape. Again, this is that lightweight plastic painted with lots of colors. And this was called Interference because it was all through the museum, and you really you know, couldn't miss it. So trying to explain, you know, to try to give a sense of something unusual happening that you might not be able to predict. And this is the last piece in this slideshow. I want to finish up by showing you a short video about my work here. So I just have to go and do this one more time. So bring it up on my, see here to get out. There we go. Gonna get out of this and bring up my video, which is here somewhere. There we go. Okay.
So my name is Adria Arch. I am an artist and I live in Arlington. I've been painting all my life, ever since I was a little kid, and then I went to art school. I had my master's in painting from Mass College of Art. I just started doing this new series of work in this big scale, and as I work on these pieces and take a look at what they are when they're done, and I never go in with an idea, particularly. I'm very much inspired by what marks and pours are on the canvas. These are a lot about movement in the end. I realized that that's a really important part of the work, and it's also a really big part of my response to the world. By starting each piece with a paint spill, which when it dries, kind of what happens is the dried spill is a frozen moment in time of a movement. I think that's what I love about starting with that. So it's a random mark that it isn't contrived, it's very natural, and it records a sense of movement. The colors and other shapes, the choices that I make to complete the painting have to do with what it feels continuation of the process. So it's very much of a call and response. It's very much of a, okay, here's the shape, this is what I have to deal with, this is the colors that I used. It's kind of like a chess game. The painting moves and then you make a move. For me, I always like each painting to be a puzzle that I'm having to solve. When is it done? That's always a question people want to know. For me, it's that balance of having enough in visual interest, but not too much. Draws you in, the viewer really wants to look at it close up and also from a distance, and yet it doesn't have too many elements going on. If a painting doesn't have an element of surprise or something about it, or even in the process that I feel is too predictable, I need to do something to it to make it a little bit off balance, a little bit surprising.
Okay, there you go.
Let's take 5 minutes if anyone wants to ask a couple very specific questions of Adria, or then we'll move on to Sandy. And we'll still have some time at the end, but I thought rather than everybody hold any question or comment, that if anybody wants to just kind of raise your hand and I'll call on you. Anybody? I don't see any hands. Well, I might be. It's a
Ricky Steinberg.
Oh, Ricky Steinberg. Go ahead. And then Mike Menard. Go ahead, Ricky.
Adria, tell us whose classes were you doodling in high school?
I was doodling in everybody's classes. Yeah, I once was doodling in my 8th grade class, and I did not like this teacher, and it was not a flattering. Do you remember? She saw it, and it was just to die. Yeah.
Very impressive work.
Thank you. Somebody else? Oh, Mike. Yeah.
Wonderful work, Adria.
Thank you.
I'm going to go back to the very beginning of your career when you did that wonderful, iconic yearbook cover. Did you also, I think you suggested that you also did design in the interior of the yearbook as well?
Yes.
And I don't have that yearbook right with me right now, but Yeah, did you continue that kind of, I don't know, striated pattern inside the yearbook as well?
Nope. It was, well, remember the theme was the dictionary? Illustrated each letter of the alphabet.
Oh, that's
Remember
right.
that? Yeah.
Right. I have my book handy if you want me to
Oh,
grab
yeah,
it.
please.
If you do, it's right here.
Oh my God, yeah.
So, okay, any other questions or comments before we move on to Sandy? Oh yeah, David, go ahead.
Adrian, in our communications,
Yep.
you had one uh, painting picture. I think you called it the bird nest, where you were using wire in that particular art piece.
Not wire. No, that was paint.
That was paint.
That was
Okay.
paint. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, I'm not really using wire except hold the pieces up.
Well, maybe
Okay,
Sandy has.
anyone else? Did I see Sally with a hand up or was you just stretching? Okay. I can't see you all at once. I have to go back and
Wait, Janice Cohen has a question.
Go ahead, Janice.
Unmute yourself. Yeah.
Hi. Hi, I was just wondering how the process that you went from going from smaller pieces to very large pieces and then to make the pieces themselves come alive. Can you tell us about that process?
Are you talking about the doodle pieces?
No, the later ones.
The later ones. How I went from painting to sculpture?
From painting, smaller paintings to very large paintings, and then for those shapes and everything, the painting come alive.
There's something really special about working very large, and I've been doing this a long time and, not getting any younger. And so, there is something to do something about working at a huge scale that is different for the viewer, different for the artist. It stretches you. Like, I never want to stay in the same place. I always want to be growing with my work. And so, I was really motivated to do a whole series of these really big, for me, the biggest has ever been 6x5. But now the sculptures, of course, are much larger, in an installation than 6x5. They're huge. It's really that you kind of strive to do what you really want to see in the world, and I wanted people to be more engaged with my work than just looking at for me. It wasn't enough to just stick with a painting. I really, really wanted that engagement. I was really working to try to make my work, grab somebody, really get them to walk around and spend more time. And so I think it was just, kind of wanting to try it and seeing. There's this many steps that you're not seeing from these pictures of the way it works incrementally, from starting on canvas to then trying something made of, in a shape that's made out of paper that, is not going to last very long. But going from paper and spending a long time playing with paper to saying, well, paper's not great because it tears and it starts to sag in the humidity. What's the next, what's the next material that I can use? Oh, plastic. But is there any kind of plastic that I can cut with a pair of scissors or an X-Acto blade? Because I really wanted to be able to do it myself. And my studio is right next to a sign manufacturer. And I walked in there one day and said, do you guys have something that I can cut, with a pair of scissors? And they said, oh, you mean like this? And it was amazing. There's this great material right next door to me. And so that's how, I started slowly and started working through that. So it's a long transformation, Janice, but thank you.
Are you thinking about doing some sculptures, like for sculpture gardens, outdoors?
Yes, I am. I'm actually having several museum shows coming up where I'm exhibiting these really big works. So, you put something out there in the world and sometimes it grabs people enough to, want to really make a space for it. That's really been very gratifying to me.
Do you have a gallery?
I belong to the Boston Sculptures Gallery in Boston. Yeah.
Okay, is there anyone else who has a comment or question for Adria? Then we'll move on to Sandy. I don't see anybody.
Okay, thank you all. Thanks for your
Oh, wait, George had a question or comment. Go ahead.
Adria,
Yeah. Hi,
Hey, when are you gonna send some stuff out here to Sacramento?
I'd love to. Is there, do you know places?
Yes, yeah, there's an art museum downtown.
Uh-huh.
They sure could use a new touch down there.
Okay. I'll send a proposal. Thank you.
Great. We look forward to it.
Okay, Sandy, are you, do you have your PowerPoint up or do you want me to try to pull it up?
Well, I'm gonna try, my only anxiety of this presentation is sharing my screen. So wait, let's see if I can do it.
Okay, you have the authority, so
I
all you
did,
have to do is have it open and click on it.
I did.
And
Okay,
hit share screen first. There you go.
there we go.
There you go. Wow, this is great.
How fun is that?
So
I
I'll
did
ask
it,
everybody
girl.
to, I'll ask everybody to mute again. Now, can you turn that left thing over? Remember how we talked about the slideshow? Go to slideshow.
And do what? No, how do I do that?
Adria, I'm gonna let you walk her through. 'cause
What? Okay, this is where Sandy has people that usually work for her that does this. Okay.
Sandy, just go up to, oh, God.
Slideshow.
Yeah, slideshow. Where is that on yours? Oh, I see it. You see right here? Slideshow at the top, very top border. Just click on slideshow. The lightest one, very, very top. The bar at the
Eight
very top.
over from the left.
Say it
There
There
again.
you go. Keep going to the right. Go further to the right.
Halfway.
There you go.
Oh,
Up, right there. Yeah.
slideshow.
Play from start. There you go.
Got it.
You got
There we
it.
go. Yay.
Yeah.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Hi. Okay, so fellow Highlanders, that's what we were, right? Okay, my presentation is going to be a little different because I usually do this as a symposium, but I'm using the same PowerPoint that I use, and I'm just going to walk us through it. So hold your questions, and I'll be happy to chat. Okay, so this is just, okay. One thing I do when one thing to know about my work is I never title my work. All my work is untitled, and I do that for lots of reasons, but the most important reason for you all to know is that I never want anybody pigeonholed into, because my work is abstract, and I never want anybody pigeonholed into thinking all my thoughts. So it's really important that the viewer put in their information, and I have learned over the years from collectors that my paintings change and get better and better. Also, I work my paintings, my art in all directions, and I never sign my name on the front. So those are some key things you need to know about me. Okay, she's an artist, and I thought she was just weird. So that's something. And once a Pittsburgh, always a Pittsburgher. I always let everybody know that I'm from Pittsburgh, and you'd be amazed how many people I run into that are still from Pittsburgh. And I'm going to tell you though, before I went to Carnegie Mellon, just because we were talking about, we've all known each other so long. So in high school and in grade, well, mostly in grade school, I don't know if Adria remembers, but there was a Tam O'Shanter class at the museum.
Oh, yeah.
We had to go to. I mean, that I didn't have to go to, that I was selected to go to. And I hated it because we were taught how to draw something a certain way. So I did that to appease my parents, and that was supposed to be a big honor. I hated every minute of it. And so I went to took a lot of classes with Elvira Peak at the Arts and Crafts Center, did a lot of ceramics, did a lot of printmaking, did a lot of painting over there. And then in my freshman and sophomore year, I started working with Barbara Ford, who prepared me for my portfolio to get, because that was a time when you had to prepare your art a certain way to get into school. It says Carnegie Mellon 71 to 1974, because my freshman year, if you remember, I all went to Stevens College, which is where my mother had gone. And they promised me the Rose Garden, and it was just not the place for me. It was very provincial for me. This painting here, this is the only oil painting I've ever done. I had to do one oil painting, and I did it. I only use acrylic, and I started using acrylics. It was born in '68 acrylics, and it's non-toxic, so that's why acrylic has been my medium. Plus it dries quickly. And as a woman artist, I've always come up against lots of things, but your work is surprisingly strong. Have you always been a woman? That's a New Yorker cartoon. And you think it's funny, but it's not. It's really true. And I met and married my husband at Carnegie Mellon. He was in GSIA, which is the graduate school, which is across from where my studio was in the Fine Arts Building, and because he had free coffee. And we married actually in college. I was still in college. I was I was junior, end of my junior year. And we moved to Washington, DC, and I had my first studio at the Arlington Arts Center, which is still around, and it's a old schoolhouse that was taken over. There were a lot of empty schools, and that was taken over by a group of artists. And the reason why I'm telling you this is because my career is sort of going into cities and starting art centers where there weren't any. So I was there for 3 years. Then my husband, after he was in the Federal Reserve, we moved to Minneapolis, which was very cold. And I had a studio there and worked there, and I had a gallery that represented me there. And I also taught at the Jewish Community Center there. Then and I had my baby, who's now 42 years old, there. And then we went to the University of Florida, go Gators, and I had a gallery that represented me there. And all the time, I right away get a studio and start working. And then this is another little cartoon, creative people are easily bored, blah, blah, blah. You can, I can go back and read all that, but you can read it quickly. Risk takers, color outside the lines, think with their heart, make lots of mistakes, hate the rules. Okay. Then we moved to Rice University in 1981. We moved to Houston. I thought there would be tumbleweed. And right away, I was lucky enough to get a gallery to represent me here. And this is where I sort of have jumped off from. And I am an artist. That does not mean I will work for free. I have bills just like you. Thank you for understanding. Yes, I'm very political. Okay, this is from my first studio. That was a picture of my first studio. I always have group studios because I feel it's important to share ideas. That was one of my first paintings I did in that studio. This is McMurtry Gallery. I was represented from 1982 to 2015. So just 5 years ago, 6 years ago. The gallery person is on the right. She's still my best friend. I talk to her every morning. And then we were at Stanford, and my husband was at the, he was at the Hoover. So I had a gallery that represented me there. That's my studio there. And another little ditty, when Winston Churchill was asked to cut arts funding in favor of war effort, he simply replied that we are what we are fighting for. Okay, this was my other group studio here. That was like a big group studio. This is one of my paintings from there. Then we moved to Tilburg. We were on a sabbatical and we lived in Tilburg, and I started a whole new, that's in the Netherlands. And I started a whole new series of art from that. This is about living in the Netherlands. Those are tulips and train tracks, and I'm going really quickly through these images because they're all on my website. And Fear No Art. And this is the Winter Street studio that I have now. I started a studio, now it's called Sawyer Arts in the Washington Arts District. It has over 350 artists. And I didn't have the money to put up, but I certainly had the concept and the ideas, and I worked with a developer to get it, and it's just going gangbusters now. That's me working in my studio there. And that's my studio. I am that messy. And it takes a lot of time to be a genius. You just have to sit around so much doing nothing, really doing nothing. And that's really, people want to come and watch me paint, but it's a lot of painting activity, but it's also a lot of thinking. This is a series, this is 7 feet by 7 feet, that painting, that's a series of my bands of color. Remember, these are all, that's on paper. This is 38 by 50 inches. These are all acrylic. This is another one, 60 by 30 inches. This is for my bands of color. People need art in their houses. They don't need Bed Bath & Beyond dentist office art. They need weird stuff. And this is from my Galveston series, because the closest water to me right now is Galveston. This is from my Galveston series. And I'm not a gorilla girl, but everybody thought I was a gorilla girl. That's advantages of being a woman artist. This is, I'm getting into some of my newest work. Mixed media, these are big. These are large. Well, this one's 38 by 50, but some are 10 feet. And this is papers, different papers that I have found through our travels. One thing that's very influential in my work is traveling, which makes it really difficult right now because we're not traveling. And I did a lot of traveling when my husband was alive. So that was really good. A lot of these are, you can see the different textures and the collage elements on it. So I'm just briefly going through these, quickly going through these. These are big. Some are bigger than others, but these are usually our works on paper or on canvas or on board. Color is really important to me. I do not start with any preconceived ideas. I just go for the gusto. I get a lot of commissions, and that's a little difficult because people have to really just believe. They have to know my work, and they have to just believe that whatever they're going to get is going to be fabulous. And so far, I haven't had any problems. So, but it is, anyway, another little ditty about art. That's my apron that everybody wants to buy. I could probably sell that more than I can sell my art. This is a piece, this is 12 by 14 feet. It's at 1901 Avenue of the Stars in Century City, if you're all in California. Debbie actually took me to see that. Debbie took that picture of me in front of the painting. She picked me up from the airport and took it. And it's also been featured in some TV shows anyway. And I did Duchess the cow. I guess some of you have had different animals appear in your cities. We had cows in 2001. That's Duchess. And that's from when I'm remembering my, okay, this is a salami painting that I did for the guy who owns the delicatessen here, Kenny and Ziggy's. Actually, Debbie went to Kenny and Ziggy's anyway. This is a bar I did, that's cracked tile. You can see that's all hand done. I just cracked it and went for the gusto, didn't have a plan. Earth Without Art is just EH. This is a piece that's in the collection of the Museum of Southwest Texas that was purchased. And other advantages of being a woman artist. These are some of my collectors. This is his, this actually, he was the superintendent of Houston's public school district. This is a painting of mine. This is a painting of mine. That's a painting of mine. And this is in Delaware. No, where does he live? Wilmington, North Carolina. That's where he lives. This is another collector of mine in front of the piece. That's a collector of mine. He just loved that. So I just throw that in. That's my name down here with all those painters. This is the gallery that represents me right now. And this is some of the just PR that they do for me every now and then. I had to do a discussion on pick my favorite painting, and it was Lust for Life, which is, you know, about Van Gogh. And this is a film they did on me. That's them shooting the film at my studio. That's a PR piece somebody did on me. Oh, this is recently, last year, I guess 2 years ago, somebody sent my name over to the Houston, in Houston, the University of Houston has a library where they collect everything that you ever wanted to know about somebody. And they invited me into their archives. So if you ever want to know anything about Sandy, they have every little piece of everything, all the PR that was written about me. This is my newest work. The Iceland series, I just had a show several months ago during COVID, which was interesting. And I'll just flip. I spent some time in Iceland last year. And just flip. And you can, all of this, okay, my upcoming show is the Jung Center. That's coming up April 16th, even if with or without COVID. And I haven't been everywhere yet, but it's on my list. Clearly, I'm being affected, as we all are, by our not being able to travel. But my work really is inspired by different cultures. I was very, very, very fortunate when my husband and I were able to travel a lot. together, and I was able to see a lot of places. And that's my QR code, and that's the end of that project. The end.
Okay, so if you stop the screen share, Sandy, or maybe Adria. Okay, great. So again, let's just ask people to kind of wave their hand if they want to make a comment or question, and either Adria and I will see you. I think Mike Menard has his hand up.
Hi, Michael.
You have to unmute.
Yeah, actually, I was asking this question to Woody during your presentation because he is, of course, a collector. How does a collector know? Oh, and by the way, wonderful work. How does a collector know which one they want if you don't really title them? I mean, you sort of answered.
Oh, they are. The good news is I've been very, very, very fortunate that I've always had galleries represent me. And at one point I had 8 galleries represent me at the same time. So what you do is you put on just a inventory number, because it's always SSB, those are my initials, SSB, Sandy Seltzer Bryant, with a number.
Nice.
So that number stays with you, and then the prices have to always stay consistent. One gallery, you know, when I did have a show in New York, and she wanted to actually almost double the prices, but all the other galleries said you can't do that because the market in New York would have, you know, been able to support that. But my collectors here and other places that I represent, you know, art is a business. That's one thing Adrian and I were talking about this. We did not learn how to do. We had no idea. I've always wanted to be an artist. I didn't know what that meant. I was very fortunate that my husband met me at Carnegie Mellon and literally dragged the canvases across the cut like they were kites, and had always been very supportive. He was an economist. He's made up crazy things and I made up crazy things. We just manifested them differently. And a collector just calls in and says, you know, this is the one we want. Because it's all, you know, and you'll see like on my website and stuff, but when their show goes up, there's a piece, a little number that goes with it. But that's how they keep track of everything. And some artists, I mean, I'm not going to get into all the art history I know, but some artists didn't even, like, they would just number 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's, you know.
I always heard that when at Pace Gallery in New York, if they weren't moving their Chuck closes, the way they would do it was they wouldn't reduce the price, they would double the price. And that's the way they would sell the work. Does that sound like
well, I had a very interesting experience. It was Perlo Gallery, and she was a big deal, Madison Avenue, and that was at age 50, and I hit the big time. And she was the worst human being possible and was so negative. And I was telling Bob the other day, I had one gallery that was in Atlanta that stole $40,000 worth of my monotypes. I didn't even show you the printmaking. I'm also a printmaker too, but just stole $40,000, and I found them on eBay one day. So it's a business, and the good news is that I've always had an excellent gallery in Houston, which has been where my base is, and everything else sort of goes. So I know the right way to play the game, but I've always had people take care of me, which is why I was technically challenged for a second. But even with that said, I'm not successful enough. I mean, people buy a lot of my art, and I'm very fortunate, but I could not support myself. I would have to get a real job. So, and I don't get a real job. So I just, hopefully sales will pick up soon, but it's different now. But people really know my work. I know that sounds weird, but if you see the work in person, you see all the different layering. It's all about histories and layerings. There's a whole other thing, but for all intents and purposes tonight, I didn't want to go into my whole real spiel when I give a real symposium kind of a talk. But I've been very lucky, and I do get some commissions, and that's usually because the person has a specific size, and then that's a little tricky. But so far they worked out okay. So thanks for the question, Michael. Woody, do you have a question?
Who else has anyone have a question? Raise your hand.
Debbie knows too much, so she's not going to ask a question.
I see any other questions? Hey, anyone else? Question or comment? Okay, well, at this point, we want to thank Sandy and Adria for their wonderful presentations, for being classmates. I just want to mention one little thing again, and then we can either try to have a group discussion or maybe break into 3 rooms of 10. I don't know, whatever people want. But I want to mention that the project that I'm coordinating again to try to restore the war